12 of the best poker players are fighting it out for the Premier League title. What will happen when egos collide, pride is wounded, and one becomes the champion of champions? Last time, it was a matchup between Phil Hellmuth and Tom Dwan, and it was the young internet sensation that rocked the poker brat firsthand.
You're in the booth again, Fish? You were in the booth last time when it came 5-5 ace and I had the ace-5, remember? Yeah, I lost that one too.
Phil was already crippled.
Well, I know one thing, Durrr. You and I are going to play tomorrow, son, because I'm going to watch every hand you play from here on out.
Phil Hellmuth was absolutely disgraced himself today. That's the truth. I mean, he's outclassed.
It's possible he just had an awesome read and made a really good fold, but it seems crazy to me.
Tom Dwan doesn't know me, and he should know, that I've been ruling the Hold'em world for 20 years. But I don't think he recognizes that.
And he's not happy with the Fish's comments either.
If you listen to Devil Fish's commentary, he's gotten personal.
Come on, call him, Phil, just so I can take the piss out of you in the green room later, buddy. It was a bad bet he made, He shouldn't have bet at the end.
He's talking about I shouldn't even bet on the river. Well, every great player in there, of course I'm supposed to bet on the river. So, there's kind of a disconnect in his commentary. I think he's gotten personal. I think he might be jealous of me again.
If Phil was made out of chocolate, he would have eaten himself years ago,
It's good when they're jealous of you and when they lose touch with reality. That's a good thing.
Going into tonight's match, Tony G started off strong in Premier League 2, and he's doing it again with 10 points through 1. He can swing freely, and he will. In the playoff zone, both Obrestad and Hellmuth will be in action tonight. And for Phil Hellmuth, it's a chance to put some points on the board. In the relegation zone, 3 of these players will be playing here, Wolfe, Helppi, and Annette. It's been a bad start for Medic, and he wants to improve on the bagel. These poker pumps are primed to play, and you better believe this heat packs a wallop. 6 players all in the need of points. You can see the chips on the table. Yellow's worth 1,000, blues are 2, reds 5,000 each. There's 100,000 in front of every player and 600K in play. Well, this is exciting to be joined in the box tonight by Tom Dwan, Durrr. Tom is the guy that everybody watches, but nobody knows what he thinks. So maybe tonight, Tom, you're going to tell us a little bit about that.
Something like that. Oh, and here we have Phil choosing to play a hand.
6,000.
The first hand, in fact.
That's pretty crazy.
And
I'd say good play by him, coming after a raise.
5.
Would have been a pretty good spot actually for Tony to re-raise versus Phil, because Phil's gonna fold there too often.
You know that Hellmuth, I can't remember the last time he started off well in one of these heats. Certainly not last time. And this is a nice flop for him. Roland's going to like it.
It's a great flop for 9-10 suited.
Now, if I was Phil here, I would check behind a huge amount of the time.
Oh, you have 8s, huh? You afraid to give a free card?
Just with Phil's image, for him to bet this flop is tough.
6,000.
All right. You might have jacks. Could be 8s.
It's been 6,000 and call.
Could be ducks.
And Roland bet and Phil made a pretty standard call here.
Check. Check.
Now, I probably would have bet that turn for value and then bet the river again.
Look at
That's
this.
Pretty lucky river for Roland.
But has Phil made a mistake on the turn here, or
No,
is
I
he
mean, I
going to
don't-
gain a lot on
It's
the
not
river?
that bad. I would
deal?
generally bet the turn, but I would check it sometimes.
I haven't done anything.
I don't mind his check, really. It obviously sucks that a 5 rolled off for him, but it's not that bad. I would generally bet it, but I don't mind it too much.
And obviously, to me it feels very tough for Phil to fold to any bet. Should Roland get greedy
Roland bet
here?
20,000 here, and this is a tough spot for Phil. I mean, I would end up paying it off almost every time.
Wow, is this the first hand again? It's unbelievable. I mean, Durrr, you know it's an easy call, right? But this is where I'm a little bit different than the rest of the world.
Pass.
That's unbelievable. It really is. Wow.
Feels like a ridiculously good laydown. but-
Yeah,
they
that's
do to
pretty
me.
awesome by Phil.
You guys all think I had nothing. That's so beautiful too. They're always shocked later when they say he had what? So beautiful.
Phil, you want to book me?
You want to book you? Yeah, I mean, I want to book you if we can all vote on who played the worst. By the way, Durrr, if Tony wins this, I just want you to know that every one that he's won, the commentators totally insulted him the whole time. It's so sick.
Raise to 6,000 total.
Can they get under Tony G's skin? Not with
Nice
the
hand,
aces.
Rolly.
Cool.
And he has flat called medic here. Now, Tony G said
Didn't really have jacks.
Cool.
before this tournament began that Nenad is one of the guys he's played with quite a bit.
Was Ace King any good?
Hellmuth's in as well. 3 ways here. And it's a straight draw for medic. If he fires out a continuation bet here, I mean, this is a guy who got a bagel his first time out. If he gets short stacked here, he could be out of the Premier League.
Ace 10, you bet 20
Raise to
dimes.
30,000.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
13 up to
Pass.
30 from G with the bullets.
Pass.
Oh no, you have.
As long as they make fun of him, as long as they keep saying that Tony G has no play, you know what? He's going to keep showing them the money.
Do you want to book me or not? That's what we're talking about.
Big mouth and a big game when it comes to the big stage. Tony G's poker keys are heart and commitment, and he's had plenty of results. He's the Bad Boys champion, Asian Poker Tour champion, and 3rd in this tournament last year.
I was more of a street kid early on in life, and growing up in the Soviet Union. So yeah, it was very rough times and a lot of experience. And I went to Australia, and I guess I learned. I was an addicted, compulsive gambler as a kid. I like to knock people down because I think I'm more of a battler, more of a player with not that much ability. Anyone at home could play as good as me. I really believe that. The key is you have to be prepared to die if you want to win. You can never save yourself because you're too good to be all in. That's not true. You can be very conservative early on, but ultimately once your stack gets to that level that you can get enough leverage to pick up some chips, you have to push it. And that's what I do. I'm fearless.
So, at the minimum. So, that's the truth.
So Tom, I mean, 4 of these guys on the table you played with the first time
Yes.
out. How did you rate their games? I mean, you had a real go at Tony G.
Yeah, he was kind of handicapped just by the way other people were playing. I think Tony is pretty observant and usually plays pretty well. But so many people were playing very tight, and he had a decent amount of chips, but a bunch less than me. And because of that, he needed to fold a ton of hands. And I could see it was bothering him. You saw there were a few times he really wanted to make a move. But it probably wasn't the right decision in this setup when he's so short on chips.
I mean, already, like, the point standings should dictate how people play. You know, guys like Nenad here and Hellmuth and Roland, they really need to get some points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to be playing pretty aggressively, trying to win a large amount of the time.
Check.
Annette's raised this pot, flop bottom pair, and checked. And now Juha's got the nut straight here from the big blind. You were kind of surprised about Juha hit a straight on the river the other night.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how he didn't check raise that. I probably would have paid it off.
4x book really is what I want.
10,000 now into 11.
And I'm sure Annette will call
Might
here
gamble some more,
with
Tony.
pair, gut shot, and a
I
flush
just
draw.
lost like 12,000 in chips, right?
Is that
She's
her?
got a what?
Yeah, is that her only option? I mean, is raise an option here?
She could raise. When she raises here, a decent amount of time, she's going to be putting in a good spot.
You can have another.
She's actually just passed
I'm
it.
pretty surprised she folded. Yeah,
Another double.
pretty surprised. Maybe she noticed a little something on Juha.
3x, like 33.
Maybe she just wants to play pretty tight today. I don't know. I definitely would plan on calling there most of the time.
1400.
Am I that good to play a 9 like that?
I had a 9-3.
Pass. Raise to 6,000 total.
Medic's down to 77,000 already. You know, it's the kind of thing. I mean, he's put 6 in here. If he loses this pot, like he's up against it.
This is true, yeah. But I still think he needs to be in there putting some chips in, hoping to win pots. Even though it doesn't look like it's going to work out too well for him.
How often do you think Roland should slow play this from the small blind?
With these exact stack sizes, almost never.
I was calling.
If he had a few more chips or a few less chips, I think it'd be fine. Or a slightly different hand. But he's got just about 40 big blinds, and queens versus an under-the-gun raiser. I don't think he has much of a choice here other than to re-raise and hoping Nenad goes all in.
Are you going to play this?
There's a chance.
I know how I know what I'm expecting you to do.
Well, Roland probably doesn't re-raise enough here without a good hand compared to some of the other players.
Might not get there.
But there's still a chance Nenad goes all in, hoping that Roland folds.
I mean, he's definitely, the way he's thinking about this, it seems like he thinks there's a chance that Roland is putting pressure on him as sort of some sort of strategy decision.
Right, I'm sure he realizes there's less of a chance Roland's putting pressure on him than the other players.
10-9-9 board.
But if you're going to choose a hand to bluff with, ace-3 suited's actually a pretty good one.
It wasn't what you think.
You're going to have a decent chance to win versus most players.
Good bluff, man. I had a pretty big hand there.
Tony G, like the ultimate hustler. He's got 10 points on the board, and yet everybody thinks he's an idiot. He's got a career like that.
5,000 total.
I mean, already, like, the point standings should dictate how people play. You know, guys like Nenad here and Hellmuth and Roland, they really need to get some points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to be playing pretty aggressively, trying to win a large amount of time.
You know, this is like the definition of temptation, isn't it? You kind of tell yourself you have to tighten up, and then you get the 10-jack suited, or...
Yeah, I mean, I think Nenad's got a call there.
Try.
And he'll probably end up winning the spot.
Check.
The check raise is the mission here?
I'm kind of surprised he checked, actually. I'd expect him to bet it with his stack size a decent amount of the time. But yeah, now he's either going to be check raising or planning to bluff later almost every time, unless he like turns a jack or something.
Cool.
Obviously, in the pot he got knocked out on, his first time at it was sort of a check raise on the turn that he to you.
Right. That was somewhat of a different situation because it was possible that his hand was good with ace high, whereas here with jack high, it's so unlikely that his hand's good.
Well, he may have been check raising the flop. He had turned the flush draw, and Annette's now checked behind him. And I mean, there's 27,000 in there. What's the best move for Nenad here?
I mean, I think I would bet it, but I don't like.
She could have been playing a queen behind to pay off the river, right?
And she might even call tens some small amount of the time there. I would definitely plan on check raising the flop, and if not, if I didn't want it for whatever reason, I'd lead out the flop.
He got it through, but it felt kind of dangerous there, didn't it?
Yeah, I just think.
It's not that good.
I agree. I think it's pretty dangerous. I think he could have done some other things that might have been.
Hit the turn.
Maybe Annette's still not too comfortable because, as you can see, she's a little worried that she might have just gotten bluffed.
I'm being serious.
King 3 suited.
Gave him a flush top. Maybe.
I think maybe Annette didn't really take enough time with that river bet. She didn't think it through, or...
Maybe he had like...
well, it would be...
Tony had come queen 3-9. And
maybe she was as surprised as you were that he didn't check raise the flop.
That might be.
Check calling the flop. No, calling the raise on the flop.
It'd be a tough call.
No, when I watched Durrr, I couldn't believe it. When he 5-8'd me when I limp with the ace-6 of hearts, that answered all my questions.
He knows you're up here, Tom.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pass. Raise to 6,000 total.
And Hellmuth, I mean, he was doing a lot more min raising, not only in his first time out, but also most of the times he's played this Premier League. Here he is 3 times the bet. I mean,
Cool.
is there a different strategy in operation here?
Hellmuth definitely is someone who likes to have like a predetermined strategy of sorts.
Doesn't make any sense.
So I think that's pretty likely.
And Tony G, what a flop!
Yeah,
he's
wow.
got.
Check. Check.
I would definitely bet out in Tony's spot here on the flop.
And now that you've hit the flush,
Check.
I would never speak.
On the turn, I think it's fine to either check or bet. But I think they both have.
10,000 plus.
Yeah, Phil had 90,000. So if he checks and Phil bets about 8 or 9,000, I mean, he obviously raises, but it's not a great spot. He makes it 30,000, and Phil can go all in. It's better if he leads out for 8,000, and occasionally Phil's going to bluff him and make it 26,000 or 30,000 or something, and then he gets to go all in.
you can kind of see the look on Phil's face already. He's like, no matter how hard he tries, he just can't get it over on Tony G. I mean, and he's down now, 84,000.
Yeah, one thing Phil does is he gets frustrated more than he should. And people give him some flack because he does play extremely odd in some circumstances, which obviously sometimes ends up looking wrong and probably being wrong too.
What do you think of 7 deuce and 7 tray?
But I think he actually makes some pretty good plays sometimes, albeit with a style that I wouldn't use.
Even better?
But I think he's a lot better than some people think.
Annette's peeled off the flop here from the big blind. And
the wider the range.
Between lead, check, fold, or something else, I mean...
It's a kind of good flop to lead because she doesn't really want to invest a ton of chips. She could check call, she could lead. I don't really like check raising.
With Brennan Cantu, a last longer bet loser.
You could check fold also.
Tony and
that would obviously be fine.
Wow. Okay.
This might have something to do with asking Juha the question if he wants to play a big pot right now.
What was that?
Well, the betting out there. I mean, he doesn't.
Oh, I thought you meant she actually asked him.
Really?
But yeah, anyway, about Phil,
we think we're going to get like over 1 million hits on YouTube.
he can play pretty weird, but he'll probably adapt somewhat.
Cloney wants to do it.
Yeah.
And realize that maybe his strategy was taken advantage of a little bit the first time. And I'd expect him to play pretty aggressively this time.
It's been about half of the first level, Tom, and by the leaderboard you can see Tony G starting off well again. And, you know, I mean, Nenad and Phil, they're under pressure, aren't they?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Tony G, even though he only has a little more than 20% of the chips right now, I think he's, you know, almost like 30% to win, just because other people are going to play some more tight, and he's going to be in there playing a lot of pots and hoping to take it down. If he gets this win, he's a lock for the finals.
The table's hotting up and tensions rising. It's going to be Phil Hellmuth who hits boiling point first.
I mean, Juha, you're really trying hard to be entertaining, but my God. It wasn't until this trip that I realized just how bad some of the great players are. Tony G, what list are you on in the top 500 in the world? You're good at telling people to ride bikes. Get on your bike.
Welcome back to the Premier League Poker. Banter level, keeping heavy tonight. You gotta be tough. You have to have a thick skin in this Premier League. You can dish it out, but you better be able to take it as well.
Pass.
Does he accept UB dollars?
Pass.
No comment there from Phil.
There's a little needle coming out. That's pretty standard for Roland. He likes to needle people quite a bit.
Yeah, he's good at it, isn't he?
Friends.
Sometimes.
Friendly pot.
Very friendly for now.
This should be slightly interesting.
Check. 3,000. Cool.
What's Annette's plan here?
Depends on what turn card rolls off. The turn card's a 2. She's probably planning on calling at least one more time and then deciding the river.
Check.
On her jack, we'll see. She's got a little bit of a tough decision if Roland bets.
Roland was very tight early on in his first time, and I think he really believes in it, but...
8,000.
nice question he's asking, Roland. I mean, maybe the last money he's intending to put in the pot.
If that's the case, then I don't like it.
Oh, so he's got to have to fire the third bullet.
No, I didn't say that, but I think there's a decent amount of cards I would bet on. Obviously, the queen would be one of them.
Check.
And what size bet do you think could get paid off? But with Annette's range that he might, can he put it on?
If I was in Roland's spot, I think I'd bet about 19 or 20,000. We'll see what he does. Obviously, I'd expect Annette to fold if I knew she had King 7.
19,000.
I'm confused.
She says she's confused, and I mean, it's because she would look at the queen and think that this card...
It's actually a card where you might think if Roland had a 10 or a jack that he wouldn't bet because of it, yet he would bluff more if he had hand like ace 8, king 8, something like that. Obviously the standard play in a net spot is going to be to fold usually, but I definitely don't hate a call in her shoes.
If I do it three more times, the most I could lose like 100,000.
Roland takes the pot, and that pushes him just into the chip lead.
Give me more motivation.
Roland the Wolf is in a league of his own when it comes to side betting. No one gives more action than this man. The first person to win both EPT and WPT titles, he was last year's Premier League runner-up.
I think I'm the best player in the world at rock, paper, scissors. I really do. If anyone sees me out there and they want to play, just come up to me. If you want to play rock, paper, scissors, I will beat you. And it is a real game of skill. I'm so relaxed about stuff, and I don't need to prove myself, but it feels like that Phil needs to prove himself over and over again. And Tony, we always laugh at Tony because I don't think that Tony belongs in this company. He doesn't belong here. He doesn't have the same poker skills of 8 or 9 of the other players here. Phil's just delusional. He's obsessed with certain celebrities. He sort of follows them around. He's obsessed with his own importance. He's very, very insecure. He's got a hell of a lot of problems. And against good players, time and again, he hasn't been able to do it, and that's been the way through his whole career, and that's why he won't go down as a great against the top players.
Different one for you too, if you like. I can come back with a rephrase if you want to play that game with me. I can.
You're capable.
No, we can do a lot
The
of
blind-on-blind battles are crucial in this format because...
It's not a hard game. You and I are writers. It's easy to spin things.
Pass.
Here we go again. Here we go again. The only
Here is a blind-on-blind, and these are two guys who were in the exact same spot their first time out, and it was interesting because Nenad won a big pot off Juha, and then when Juha had the big hand against Nenad, he didn't get any value out of it.
Well, I think Juha, as is seen here, a lot of times plays a little bit too tight.
And this is something that J.C. Tran actually did his first time out, sort of the limp in with the ace and the small blind.
But that's what I meant.
And then if he gets raised, he just calls. I mean...
It's a little bit different for J.C. Tran to be doing that, though, because when he limps in and calls, he could have a large range of hands. Whereas when Juha limps in and calls, or limps in at all, you expect him to have a somewhat decent hand.
Make it for half the unit.
I'd look for Nenad to put in a small bet here.
Half the unit.
Somewhat surprised he checked.
So you just want to go 1/2 unit, 37.
The thing I was saying about people not making enough small bluffs makes it a good spot to put in a small bet versus Juha, I think. Now I'm sure Nenad will call at least one bullet.
Cool.
I just want to get close on them. I don't like keeping them forever.
And there's obviously a lot of cards on the river that are going to... Well, that's probably one of the better cards as far as Nenad's thinking. But
I said I play this
and from what you were saying, I mean, both guys did play that pot rather straightforward, and either one of those could have won that, right?
I'm fine with the way Nenad played it, but and I might limp ace 8 a bit, but if I had Juha's image, I would definitely raise it almost every time. I just think it plays better for so many reasons for him to make it 5,000 or 6,000 there.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say hindsight here, but Juha really could have found a lot of ways to win that pot, even after the flop, right?
Okay.
Yes, he could have, but I wouldn't like for him to just go nuts after the flop versus a random hand that Nenad could have flop shoot pair or a pair and a flush draw or very rarely flop a flush or something like that, and he's just got almost no chance to improve there, and his ace high is going to be good some of the time.
Raise to 5,000 total.
I just like settling, collecting.
Cool.
That's fair.
5,000. Quickly called by Roland.
Who doesn't want to show us his cards, apparently.
I have no creditors.
Oh, 2 queens, huh?
He was actually, Tom, the guy in last time's Premier League who slow played his big pairs the most. I mean,
well, in this spot, I think it's a lot better because Annette raised under the gun, and for him to just call, someone might try to squeeze and steal the pot after. Also, if he re-raises it, it looks pretty strong, and she might have a pretty easy time folding a hand like ace-jack. Not to say I wouldn't re-raise, but this one is a much better spot to slow play than the other opportunity he would have had.
Check on the flop. Now, how sure is Roland he has the best hand?
Do you have problems in Russia?
Versus anyone else at the table other than Annette or Nenad, probably very sure. But they can both play pretty tricky, and if he bets the turn and gets raised, he can't be too happy there. I still would probably bet, but I don't hate his check versus Annette.
8,000.
That's one of the benefits of being a pretty aggressive player, is that you'll get some free cards in that kind of spot.
All over.
And
whereas if you're a person who only raises with the goods, then someone can just bet all day, and if you raise, they know they can fold because you always have a good hand.
All over for me. For a while.
Sorry about that. Not bad.
I was on the table with this guy in Poland, in the last 2 tables of EP2, Kapitanov.
Still in the first level here.
He was very insulted by poking.
And I think Roland's got chirping chips.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like nothing. He said
everybody else just kind of letting him talk at it. Raise here from Hellmuth up to 6,000.
And he said, in Russia, this biggest
quick
insult you can say
call
to
from Nenad.
You lose head.
G with the pair in the small blind will be 3 ways for the flop.
I told Tony 2 times. You do not say this to Russian man.
That's a Russian accent, I
Maybe
think.
In
from the Wolfe.
London is different. But in Russia you don't say. Where's Kravchenko?
Nice flop for Phil. But he's not going to love it if he gets action.
11,000.
Now this would be a tricky little spot for either of them to raise. Looks like Nenad's thinking about doing that.
And what would the reason be for raising? He's got Tony G behind him. Is it because he knows that Hellmuth, folds, it makes good laydowns, or?
Well, I mean, it looks like a pretty strong spot to raise, and it's tough for someone to continue without a good hand.
10,000 more, 29 total.
It's obviously a tricky spot. You can't do it too much, but Nenad's got a pretty tight image, and it's a aggressive, tricky play here, and Hellmuth's going to have a really tough decision when it gets back to him. And even if he calls, Nenad has quite a few cards he could hit where he either has the best hand or gets to bluff and probably win the pot.
I mean, it's very reasonable for Nenad to have a sort of an overpair here, 7s or 8s or something. So does Hellmuth have to make kind of
And he could also have a 9, obviously. It's a very, very tricky spot for Phil.
He says he's the best in the world at looking into people's souls. This would be a great spot for that.
I personally know that Nenad thinks Phil's a little bit too tight, and he's going to use his tight image a little bit versus Phil, but it's obviously hard for Phil to know that.
I had you beat. But I look forward to the challenge of you trying to bluff me. This might not be the best week to bluff me.
You're playing well.
Some weeks I'm not really as bluffable.
I understand.
But maybe
Hellmuth
Nenad
down to 64,000.
Yes.
And here's blind on blind again. Obrestad and Roland.
Now I would raise Annette's hand here, and she did.
I would have found out if I raised.
Oh, I wouldn't raise it if I knew he had jacks, though.
It's a difference. I can call you if you raise.
And what line is Roland going to take here?
Annette only has 70,000, so I would make it about 16,000. But Roland likes to slow play here. I don't really approve of his decision. I think I would make it 16,000 with a decent amount of hands. Obviously, my pretty good hands being some of them. This is a really good flop for Annette to bet. I'm sure Roland won't be folding, but if I was in Annette's spot, I would plan on betting. Again, if she checks here, then it becomes increasingly likely that she has a really good beat on Roland.
Yeah.
But apparently this time her radar was a little off.
She thought about it. I was like,
I mean, I would bet this
What do
flop
I do now?
almost every single time in her shoes, so I would need some really strong read not to.
Now there's 28,000 in there.
And look for Annette to win the pot. I think it's fine in her shoes to just open shove and go all in, to bet something like 16,000, or to check and raise. And I would expect that she'll plan on doing one of those three options.
14,000.
It's great. I mean, she's not somebody who makes a lot of two-barrel bluffs. Or, I mean, obviously she's capable of it. Why did she need to make it there? What were the factors? I mean,
well, if Roland doesn't have a king in his hand, it's very tough for him to continue. Annette could have picked up a queen on the turn. She could have hit a king on the flop, or she could have a monster hand.
shows how much I'm paying attention.
Early in this horse race, all about keeping your cool as the banter levels go up, the needles fly. There's a man who takes it in stride.
Call. Call. Call.
We've got Tony G just limping in this hand with the ace-5 up front, and that's coming behind on the button. King-9. And here's Hellmuth. He just looks miserable, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does look pretty unhappy there. I think someone flopped 2 pair, right?
Yeah,
Check.
Roland.
got top pair.
Check. Check.
I would definitely be betting this flop in Roland's shoes.
5,000.
Just with everyone's stack sizes, I don't think it's a great spot to go for a check raise.
Call. Call. Pass.
And I mean, if it comes
Check.
7 there,
Check.
he's going broke. And look at this. Now look how small
plus
this
he's
pot
not gonna.
is.
Yeah, he might get one more bet in here, maybe.
So I mean, when you're in the small blind, it's and you flop a big hand, it's more correct to fast play it, right?
That's not always true. And I might check raise a set of deuces here. But I wouldn't choose 2-6 as the hand to check raise. There's too many times you miss value from a hand like King-9 or give a free card to a hand like 6-5 or something like that. And also you just can't represent a bluff all that often.
You know I don't like to fold, right? It really, really sucks.
What is it like to make some hands? It's unbelievable.
First level's over, Tom. Blinds are going to 2 and 4,000. And do you think this leaderboard tells the story of what's happened?
I mean, Phil's a little short again, and this is going to be tough for him. He needs to try to get some points this time, so it might even be right for him to play pretty tight like he did last time. Look for Tony G to just get a bunch of chips, especially the way Roland's playing. Tony G can just be in there playing a lot of pots.
Welcome back to Party Poker Premier League Poker. It's 10 points for first place and 0 points for first out in this league format.
At the end?
Deep or no, he wasn't deep.
No, I mean with like 150 players left.
No,
5 variations of Men in Black
So that deserved to
and a
win.
lady.
Did he win that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he have a decent stack when he?
A limp in from Roland with the ace-queen to Hellmuth.
And I really don't like this play. If he raises, I mean, Hellmuth should be going all in a decent amount, and I just really don't like this play. And now he's obviously going to go all in,
It's
but
a good time for you to
he only gets on against a lower
it's
ace.
a lot harder for Hellmuth to believe that he has nothing, and it's possible that Hellmuth even could fold this hand, which would be crazy.
And I mean, if the Wolf had just made a small raise to start things out with, they'd
I mean, Hellmuth
Hellmuth
either would have
stuffed the
called
chips in.
or went all in. Hellmuth probably doesn't go all in quite enough compared to most people there, but he still might have.
Tell me, you went crazy with the 5-3, or you actually have something?
What would Durrr?
You were laughing before. Now that I look at you, you're like afraid to look at me, huh?
Show us how world class you are.
Show everyone.
Do the right thing.
God, I don't want to fold.
We all know.
I guess
You're too
maybe
good to
have
call
Good
with
fold
ace-4.
here,
You're
but
never
still,
going to be.
Call the bluff.
I'm not afraid to call with ace
You
4.
are. Come on. You know you're too good.
I mean, I don't really like his raise.
You're too good to call with ace-4. We all know it.
That's wrong. This Premier League, you'll see me make a call like that. I promise you.
I mean,
It's going to be against somebody like Roland or Durrr.
You know you can just
where the call's
wait.
coming.
I play super tight. Out, you know?
I mean, where has the world come to? I mean, he used to interview you, and now he's bullying you on TV, like you're nothing.
I mean, Juha, you're really trying hard to be entertaining, but my God. You better leave that to me. I'm a pro.
When Helppi starts picking on you, you know you're a punching bag. A big one.
What?
Roland, raise from the button. This is a bit
6,000 more.
out of line.
Oh, you said more?
This would be a pretty good spot for Phil to have gone all in. He's got only
You said
54,000.
6,000. I don't know.
And if he had any semblance of a hand, it's a good time for him to go all in.
You said 6,000 more? Really? Just like that? You want to
No,
bet?
he said 6,000, then he said more.
Wait, let me just bet him. Just give me a chance.
Let's get the dealer to say. That's what
I
I
hate
want.
when Phil
Whatever
does
the
that
dealer
kind of
says.
stuff.
You shouldn't be leading a player on if it's 6,000.
Yeah,
Tony
I
G
mean,
is right here.
He couldn't make
And
it.
Tony G is one of the people that
and then I
won't
said
speak
more.
up very much in a dispute,
When you
except when
said
he's
she has
pretty
just
damn
minimum
sure what he's saying is right.
Yeah.
8,000.
Whereas a lot of other players at the table will just voice their opinion when it doesn't really help anyone.
yeah, and Matt Marty's made the right decision here. When Roland
Yeah,
said
he
6,000, he actually still thought the blinds were 1 and 2, didn't
Right.
At least you tried.
8,000.
he? Interestingly enough, I think Helppi was calling if it was 6,000 or if it was 8,000 or 6,000 more, which is only 10.
I agree. And now one of the things about Juha is he likes to check his good hands a lot. It's still tough for Roland with just jack high and backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, but he might decide to put in a raise here.
13,000.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they have so much history. I mean, forget about at the table. They're like together 24 hours a day during this Premier League, playing Chinese poker, gambling. They know each other like inside out.
Well, I think Roland might know Juha a little better than Juha knows Roland here. And it's pretty crazy that Roland's able to confidently put in 21,000 here. Again,
What does he
I
have,
think
aces
I
or kings,
would do
Durrr?
that some small amount of the time also.
Huh?
Here, bro. I can shut.
You play so bad.
Wow, the jack 4.
Of course he shows it right
They're too
away
good to call
to
you.
get one over on
Every
Juha.
time they're too good to call.
They call him a robot, but Juha Helppi won't care. The Flying Finn was the winner of the first ever Premier League poker and has a WPT title to boot.
I think we all come here to prove something because it's full of great players, 12 well-known players. Everybody wants to prove that he or she is the best of this group. Last year was really painful for me. I was the defending champion and I came 10th out of 12 players. But the thing is that the success in poker is not about never falling, it's about rising every time you fall. So I'm gonna rise again and you will see me do well this year.
The school of the walrus.
I mean, you have to admit, Tom, that it's this Premier League. There's something fun about the fact that everyone goes out and instantly knows every hand that everybody had they played against, because that makes it levels on levels, doesn't it?
I think it's a good setup. I like it a lot.
Cool.
Are you going to be making some strategy adjustments for next time and the time after that based on what people did against you? I mean,
Versus particular players, probably. Not as much what they did against me as what they saw me do. I'll try to figure out what they're going to do next time based on what they did last time, but not necessarily expect them to do the same thing.
this was a limp from the
Now,
button by Hellmuth.
Here I would bet in Juha's spot almost every time. Again, if
6,000.
I personally would bet, but the other two players might realize, like Roland did, that neither of them even thought about it, but Juha just doesn't bet his good hands quite enough. So he's a good candidate to raise with nothing and give up if he plays.
It's like a standard play to bet these sort of weak hands to find out where you're at from the small blind against a wide range of players. But against this field, it's going to be exploited, isn't it?
Well, if you do what Juha's doing, which is bet those kind of hands and still end up checking hands like Roland had with the 6-2, then it should be exploited. I mean, neither of them even thought about it for a second, so maybe it won't be. But I would expect Nenad to take advantage of it a little bit. Roland to take advantage of it a bit.
King Queen offsuit folding under the gun from Annette. What's
that's
that
just
about?
crazy. I don't know. Maybe she misread her cards. Who knows? I mean, I would either limp or raise 100% of the time. I could never imagine folding, or tell the guy next to me that I had seen that he had aces, or something like that. I just crazy news.
Let's go into battle. Check.
Coming soon.
Here's another spot where an overcard and some backdoor straight draws where he could bet a lot of turns. I would definitely bet Nenad's hand.
He's gonna get action.
This is
Tony's
gonna
got
get a
the
little
draw.
interesting.
6,000.
Now Tony's gonna probably call here.
Friendship is over.
Yeah, I was talking to Tony earlier. He was saying
Call the battle for a reason.
what he was trying to do the first tee is really make sure against dangerous players the pot stays small.
That's actually going to be a card where Tony's able to get away pretty easily. There's just not that much Nenad has that Tony has beat. He might decide to bluff raise, but he can't really call here too much.
Two pair good.
Like a river 2 or something, he might call some small amount of the time. But a 5, he just can't.
$29 hands, and I mean, Roland has put the other guys under pressure, or what do you think's going to happen?
That's true. I think Roland's put them under pressure, but I'd look for him to actually slow down here, which I don't think is necessarily the right decision, but I think that's what Roland will choose to do. He's showed a few bluffs, and I think he's going to be afraid people are going to start playing back at him, which is probably somewhat true, but I would still be raising anyway and just expect they aren't going to play back enough, and it would work out well. Tony G's been playing a little tighter than I expected. I would hope and assume that he's going to open up sometime soon, but I'm not really sure.
Didn't work out. It's got a new system.
It all goes around. Juha started
Hit the
talking.
Wolf on the button.
I'm playing poker.
You're playing poker.
Phil's going to be reporting.
So if you're looking at this table, Tom, right now, I mean, the easiest big blinds to steal, or the ones you'd like to steal most, are they Hellmuth and Helppi?
Yes, definitely. But the problem is, like, if it folds to Roland,
It's getting tighter.
he's going to raise way too much here on paper, which might be right for those two people. But even though they want to be tight, they're going to be somewhat observant. And I think it's easier for someone like Tony G or Annette to steal.
How many?
I think Tony is absolutely crazy for just calling there instead of raising.
What's the
So why
idea?
do you want to talk to me about Hold'em?
Cool. Cool.
But I understand. I mean, it must
And I
be
think that's
very hard
crazy
for you
that
get
Phil
to see the
said,
whole cards and you still don't understand what I'm doing.
That Phil said Tony isn't the top 100 in the world.
Is that frustrating?
I think there's a lot of setups to hold him where he isn't. If you said, you know, playing one game where everyone's comfortably rolled for a really long time, heads up, then he might not be, whatever. But if you just threw a bunch of people in a really high stakes game where they weren't comfortable, Tony definitely is going to play very good in most spots.
Yeah, I know what you mean. If you put him on a ship and you get thrown off when you lose your money, Tony's going to be there for a pretty long time.
Then Tony's going to be a good person to have your money on. If you have some random $5,000 buy-in 25-50 game, he might be the fish because he doesn't care that much. Whatever, but if the game gets high enough stakes, Tony's going to play pretty well.
There's only won 5 pots so far, Hellmuth, and none of them have been big.
Right, 11,000
Here
total.
comes Roland. Is he under the gun? This is the first time Hellmuth's actually picked up a big pair in the
Yeah, and
Premier
here's
League.
a spot that I'd raise all in with a lot of hands. Obviously, Kings is also one of them.
Does he have another option? I mean, is there an argument for another option?
Disagree with 46,000. I don't think so. If he had 56,000, then very rarely I would call. Very, very rarely. But with 46,000, I would shove every single time I was playing here. And if anyone but Phil Hellmuth shoved with 46,000, Roland would actually have a tough time folding the King 10. Here, I would look for him to fold. Again, if anyone else shoved for 46,000, Juha would not have a choice but to get all his chips in with the ace queen here. He might be able to make a hero fold here versus Hellmuth.
Be half a stack to call, but the fact is, you
If
know,
he plays, he needs to go
Roland's
all
got a
in.
lot of chips. Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have a choice except to go all in. There you go.
And, I mean, the thing about going all in, like, DeWolf's getting nearly 2-1 here, which you said, against almost everybody, you have to call a lot of times.
Right. Well, because King High is just...
Can I show my hand?
Should be good versus people a huge amount of the time, or it should be a coin flip.
Huh? Can I show my hand?
But the problem is still Hellmuth. It's a really bad fold by Roland.
Right.
Anyone else except for Hellmuth automatically goes in 100% of the time with 2 9s there.
Well, Hellmuth gets a few chips back.
And then we need to give credit to that fold by Juha. He realized the situation and the fact that Hellmuth was going to be really tight there, and it's still a tough spot, but it really probably is the right fold.
This is blind on blind, Hellmuth and Helppi. 7-10, I mean...
I would probably raise here in Phil's spot versus Juha.
And then fold to the
re-raise. It ends up better since Juha has jacks that he didn't, but he makes it about 11,000. He's just going to take down the pot a lot.
Raise 10,000 more.
And again, Juha only puts chips in when he has good hands, it seems like, in this format, and he's almost definitely not going to get action here. I don't know what Phil's thinking about. I mean, he's got to know Juha's pretty tight. Okay.
I have the feeling he just likes to make it all painful.
Yeah, I think that might be true.
It's actually been unlucky for Helppi because they do raise his blind quite often. I mean, you know.
I don't know if that's unlucky. I guess that no one raised that time, but people still would shy away from him re-raising. He wouldn't gain that many chips.
Welcome back to Premier League Poker. Always hard to get that first player out here. Nobody wants 0 points.
Raise it up.
Raise.
$10,000.
See, it's going to be a little bit tough for people to fold decent hands to Roland here because he plays a decent amount of hands. He actually could get some action on his good hands. It seems like he got a little unlucky that everyone has completely nothing. But here comes Tony G.
Cool.
He came to play.
And I mean, you called it out absolutely
and
perfectly.
I think the call is fine by Tony G. But he could end up losing a little money here because Roland actually has a decent hand.
Roland is one of the guys.
Little flop.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Well, I just feel like Roland is one of the people that makes the most fun of Tony G. I mean, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say animosity, but I think.
Check.
Oh, I'm really surprised that Tony G checked this turn. I sincerely hope. Wow, I was saying I sincerely hope he's going to raise once he checks.
You think it's that call is his worst option there on the turn?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely raise. Call's better than fold, obviously, but...
Check.
King. Ace.
And the thing is, since he had king high...
You thought there was showdown value? Or
There is some showdown value, but... If he had jack high, he absolutely needs to either bet the flop, or check raise the flop, or bet the turn. Make sure some chips go in, or having checked the turn, definitely check raise. With king high, I don't like his play, but...
7 on the turn.
There can be reasons for it.
It's like he's all of a sudden gotten very weak.
Much,
he started off very strong in
this.
And
I agree. I didn't see his hands from the first time yet, so it's possible that he pulled a ton of crazy plays and thinks that people are going to never fold to him and not give him enough respect because of that. But if that isn't the case, then I don't like the way he's playing today. If that is the case, I understand it, but I still probably would do something a little different myself.
Nenad on the button, and then the blinds are going to 3 and 6.
Nice.
And perhaps Roland is starting to seize on this idea that the table is tightened up a little and he can press his chip lead.
I mean, that seems like it might be true.
Most players would re-raise here, or because he's under the gun.
Actually, Juha's stack size is pretty rough for re-raise. If he re-raises,
he's
can't really fold.
Yep.
But he's not likely to get action from worse hands too often. Versus Roland, it probably is right to re-raise and call. But Juha's thinking if he played himself that he'd only go in with a worse hand and stuff.
This is going to be a tricky flop for him, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And if Juha played a little more aggressively, then he could re-raise and someone might go all in with a hand like 4s hoping he'd fold. But Roland would know if Juha re-raised that it's very, very unlikely Juha would re-raise and fold. But on the same note, he couldn't really re-raise and fold eights once he's getting 2-1. So
obviously, I mean, if Juha is thinking about betting here, he also has to consider what he's going to do if he gets raised, right? I mean,
that's somewhat important, but not a huge issue. I would say it's somewhat different pre-flop because it's more likely if he raised that Roland would have gotten all in. But once Roland checks this flop, he's going to be giving it up a decent amount of the time. Not a ton, but a decent amount.
He's bet 10 out of 99 and 10 into 26. I mean, it felt like a real feeler bet. I guess it was.
That's kind of true, but also remember that Roland recently showed him a bluff. And if anything, Roland's probably going to be a little too nervous to bluff a second time, having just showed Juha that. I don't know if Juha's on that level or if he's just like, I'd bet and hope he folds. It might be more likely he's on the second one, but the bet's good for a lot of reasons.
Well, they've played 2 levels full, and the Wolfe's out front, but you know, it feels very sketchy in there. I mean, nobody's busted.
That's true. It's starting to get likely that someone will bust because Annette's the short stack, and I think she's going to realize that it's probably not in her best interest to sit around and hope someone else busts. She still won't be spewing in her chips or anything like that, but she will look to try to gain a few, and there's a chance that she either busts out herself or that she doubles up off someone and triples down. We'll see how it goes.
Only worked.
How old were you when you started?
Only worked the streets.
15.
15. That's sick.
I was on the streets.
You worked?
Yeah.
And Tony G is a little card dead this game, so that's part of the reason, but he still has had some opportunities that I think he should have pounced on to play a few hands. And here I would go all in every single time in Phil's spot. He might end up deciding to do that, but
he did last time. He had 10 big blinds on the button.
It's definitely the right decision here. It's just he should either be limping or going all in with 100% of his range here. If he had 12 big blinds, he could make it something like 14,000 very rarely, but with 10,
that's a lot.
It's definitely right for him to go all in if he's raising.
And is the way Hellmuth plays this hand going to have any effect on Helppi? I mean, what is King-Queen against the Hellmuth's range right now?
The thing is, you can't fold King-Queen versus someone with 10 big blinds who's playing pretty aggressively from the button, but Hellmuth really isn't doing that, so it's going to be actually a pretty tough decision for Helppi. I'm sure if it was me on the button that he would plan on getting it in there. It would be the right decision by him at least. But versus Hellmuth, it's a lot closer. He's still going to probably play a hand like a King Jack, King 10, Queen Jack. But also there's the fact that Nenad has him covered, and that this tournament gives a lot of weight to not calling all ends, especially early. So it's not really an easy decision for Helppi here.
Yeah, it's half his stack. I mean, obviously,
especially with how tight Phil's playing, I probably would end up folding in Helppi's spot.
And when you say that it doesn't give weight to calling all ins early, I mean it's that if Helppi calls here, I mean what he's doing. Forget about Hellmuth. He's benefiting He's benefiting all the other players at the table, isn't he?
And he'd obviously need to be risking a stack of Nenad and beat. Also, he'd be short stack if he lost, and there's just such a good chance that he gets at least 2 points if he folds this hand. Whereas if he chooses to play it, there's a large chance he ends up not getting those 2 points.
Feels like, I mean, he folded the ace-queen. Is there an inkling?
This is a very different spot than the ace-queen, though. In this spot, if he had a hand like, if it was even king-queen suited, he would never be able to fold. If it was versus anyone but Phil, he'd never be able to fold. And if he had a hand like ace-8, ace-9, he would need to automatically go in, along with any pair of like sixes or better.
Right.
And versus most players, all those standards would be loosened even more. But again, Phil's probably looking down at a hand like Jack-8 suited and not going all in, where it would probably be the right decision for him to do that. And because of that, because Phil's probably not going all in with the Jack-8, it might be right for Juha to fold the King-Queen.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second time that Phil's raised all in on the button here with 10 big blinds. So I just wondered, it's probably the third time he's gone all in the last
Phil's
10
been playing
hands.
for 15 years and not bluffing enough for those whole 15 years.
Right.
I'm usually not a huge fan of looking at results, but when you have 15 years of someone playing too tight, that can take precedence.
Well said. And he's laid it down.
And good fold by Juha. Don't know if he folded because he thought Hellmuth had a good hand, or if he folded because of all of what I just said, or if it was some combo of the two.
Guess next time I gotta call. I would have insta-called Annette in the same situation, but...
Did you hear what he just said about insta-calling Annette?
I played 2 Premier Leagues.
Which is definitely true.
I've really done that with bad hands.
And it would be right also.
Yeah. Just all in. It's like when Bjorn Borg came back with a wooden racket.
Nice.
Like 10 years after you retired. Sad to see.
He's comparing Hellmuth to Bjorn Borg. It's not bad, actually.
He's got chips in his pocket.
And now I would think there's a decent chance Tony G will, I was saying if Nenad raised that Tony G would choose to put a bunch of chips in here. Because he knows he's been aggressive. Obviously with 2-3 offsuit, he would have chosen to fold. And in Nenad's spot with Tony having only 14 big blinds, I'd probably just go all in when it folded for me in the small blind. I don't hate limping, but I think all in's a slightly better option.
There's that chart that they have that shows, you know, with sort of the big blind having how many big blinds. Do you subscribe? Have you read that? I mean, is that?
No, I mean
you're aware
know
of it.
a lot of people who play.
Is it William Chen's chart or something like that? Yeah.
Sit and goes and do like push bot stuff, which is what those charts apply to, and they're not that bad, but they're not the perfect strategy. It's because people think there's only the option of going all in or folding.
That's better than queens.
Everyone's just expecting me to shove. Sick. Everyone's just trapping.
Like
they're trying to.
And he or she's a little worried that people are overly trapping her.
Yeah.
Which people might trap a little bit, but they're not. They're still mainly worried about putting chips in the pot first and not busting out is their primary concern. Trapping secondary. That might change later.
I mean, I think more than the strategic stuff, there's some great stuff, but the dynamics that people start to lay, the foundations, like, for later on are just great, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
What do you have, mister?
Tony's going to have to play that a couple times here.
And now I would call here in Roland's spot.
It's 10,000 more. He's got 147, and Ned's got about 115 back.
Right, and if he raised, it would work. Wow, that is just crazy.
And that's just that he doesn't want to be forced to play a big pot?
Or recently went blind in both eyes, I don't know.
But do you think he's scared of being forced to play a big pot? He doesn't trust himself enough?
I think that fold is absolutely terrible. He ended up being slightly behind, but I just think it's completely awful. I would never, ever fold that hand, especially to Nenad, who's definitely raising a decent amount of hands. I mean, I have no idea what was going through his head.
So you're not really, like, big fan of the thing where people think, well, these hands get me into trouble. I mean, it's just
with 20 big blinds, I mean, if you have 150 big blinds, King Queen might get you into trouble. But with 20 big blinds, you should be extremely happy, because if you flop top pair, you're super happy to go all in, and that's going to happen a lot of the time.
It's fun when you win. Queen 9 is a good call. I mean, when the two people all in, just call just for fun. Just
I think it was Queen 8.
I thought it was last.
Right, all in. Nice.
And she's picked on Juha Helppi's big blind here.
And this shove with 6 high would be somewhat questionable. I still might do it depending who the blinds were, but with Phil Hellmuth and Juha in the blinds, it's just extremely standard.
No harm done.
It's just so likely they're going to look down at a hand like King 9 in the big blind and choose to fold it, which is crazy, but...
Yeah, I mean, when you knocked Helppi out in the last time, I think you made the call for was nearly 7 or 8 big blinds for Queen 9.
That call was close because it's versus Juha, where versus Annette, if she shoved 10 big blinds, I'd insta call and do a happy dance. But it's just, I mean, some people shove way too tight there. Annette obviously isn't one of them.
Are we actually going to get to see your happy dance during this Premier League?
And now I would go all in again with Annette's hand here. Is that what she did, I believe?
I think she might have passed it.
No, she's all in. No, there's no way she'd pass.
Okay.
You'd need to be on the crazy pills to do that.
That could be a wash.
Pass. Pass.
Now that's the Annette that I know right there. 2 all-ins in a row.
Yeah, now I can fold again.
Still a full table. This is really deep not to
Do they
have
have a
lost
business
anyone.
strategist or
Nearly
do you not
3
need
full
one?
levels.
Pass. All in.
Here's Obrestad with. Yeah, and
now Roland's probably going to need to call here. Where's... Oh, it's pretty close for him.
He's got 129,000. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and he moved all in over the top. And he's behind, but I can't fault his play.
When Annette folded, did that affect your
And I
playing
mean,
that
something
hand?
about what Roland's doing here, it shows that he's realizing he's going to have to start going for the 10 points. The 10 points is out there, right? And
No,
he's
I
got to
think
gather.
he just is playing the player, and Annette's going to shove a pretty good range here.
I'll let this
Pass.
I had ace 10 of clubs.
You got king?
So he's got to get it in with
Queen.
ace 9 here.
You had what?
It's not
Good
bad
flop
either.
for her.
It's pretty good flop too. Give me a heart.
It's going to be tough.
Ace of hearts would have been ultimate sweat.
That would have been a good sweat card.
Good feeling.
Yeah, well,
You're not going to get there this time.
not in form.
Durr's in the booth though, so.
That's it. Queens
back to
double
the
up, and Annette
Speciality.
back
Well played,
better than
Roland.
where she started. I mean, at a full table, you survived the sweat,
It's hard to pick
and
up
now
ace 9. Well played, kid.
she's in there with every shot.
You got to win them. You got to win.
But
You get
I
no
mean,
point for-
I don't know. You know, Roland's got 77,000. He's going to look at that stack right now and think, geez, you know, what happened here? There's 6 players left. All of a sudden, I'm 5th stack. It's more than just losing a race, isn't it?
And now, actually, in Roland's spot,
Maybe I did.
it's
maybe
not
I
that
didn't.
bad for him to play
We'll see, I guess.
somewhat tight, because he's been pretty active, and people know that. And he doesn't have a great image anyway.
Raised. 15,000 total.
And now, someone's got a better hand than Juha, so they're going to give him action. Basically, Nenad might look down at a hand like ace-9 suited and even fold it.
Not here.
But ace-queen, he's definitely not going to. I'd expect him to go all in. That would clearly be the right choice without seeing Juha's cards.
Well, I was just
I'd
thinking, I
assume he'll
mean,
make it.
isn't it an awkward stack for the
Not
all-in
really.
re-raise?
He's got it's 20 big blinds effective, a little bit less, and he should basically be either calling or going all in here if he's playing the hand. I mean, it looks like he might be raising to about 70,000, which is just about the same thing. But I would never make a raise to.
Re-raise.
I would never make a
28
raise
more.
to 43,000. I would either go
Is that
all
what
in
he's
or
done?
call. Yeah.
It was also, I mean, if you think about the way he got knocked out, of course, in the first time, I know it was a lot different situation, but he made this really awkward raise size that, you know, then all of a sudden he had another decision once you went all in. And, like, that's exactly, if Juha does go all in, all of a sudden he's got another
No,
decision.
I mean, if Juha goes all in, he's definitely calling. But,
so this is just sort of a mix-up play? Where
it's definitely, like, I would never, ever make it anything except all in versus anyone except the very worst of players. And no one here qualifies in that group.
Right.
I mean, it ends up being the same result most of the time, but I just don't like it.
Had the 5s.
I mean, obviously, if Juha knows what he's got, he would love to call. I mean, love to call and see the flop before putting.
Pass. All in.
And here he's got to call Roland's shove.
It's going to end up being a total of 70,000, I think.
Yeah, he has no choice. Roland probably knows that he's opening a decent amount of hands, and he's going to shove a lot of hands that are
55,000.
that ace jack's doing fine versus.
The Wolfe.
Yeah, not just that, but Ned can obviously he loses this. He's still got 100. I mean, he's.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of bad for him that someone chose to, look down at a hand because it's better for him if everyone just keeps getting whittled down because then no one wants to be the person who goes out. But also, if you bust Roland, that's one of the few people who will put chips in the pot, and then everyone else is going to be handicapped by Hellmuth folding his way up, which is likely to happen, but not definite.
I've been running good in flips against
I have no clue why he's thinking.
I mean, is there something about if he folds?
No, there's just no way I could ever fold. If Roland has a hand like an ace-9 suited or ace-10 suited, he's gonna probably stick it in.
16 he shoved for 50.
I mean, I just
like, this sort of idea about like things are going so well for him that you know, if he just lets this one get by,
But-
he's going to keep whittling him away.
Right, but then
Sooner or later you have.
First
the
of
next
all, I
time
mean,
it
as far as a
happens-
long time kind of perspective, if Nenad's holding ace jack there, then Roland can just profitably shove 2 napkins.
Right. I was just thinking about this story about, like, you know, I heard this guy mend the master, you know, when everyone was playing so tight, he was raising every pot. And at one point, like, he raised 2 chips and the guy was all in for 3, and he folded for the last chip because he knew he was going to keep winning so many more chips.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably a terrible decision by him that he explained away with some bad logic, but who knows? I mean, a lot of people make decisions that are bad and then try to, you know,
Right.
say they're decent afterwards, but that does not sound good.
Too easy. I want to flip first time.
Yeah.
Who actually thought? Did anyone think the 9s would win?
I thought you were gonna lose.
Yeah, me too.
How are the dynamics going to change now? The Wolf all of a sudden has 150, and Medic is back to square one. You think Medic still got the game to be active here? I mean,
I said, well, he just blew him.
Or obviously needs to be a little bit less active. He was just playing so many pots, and someone like Juha or Hellmuth might get annoyed by that, or even Annette. She a lot of times bases her decisions, I think, on recent actions of other people. So he probably needs to play a little tighter since he's short on chips and stuff.
I never won.
Raised 14,000 total. First.
I'm all in.
You raised all in.
all in, small blind.
How much is that?
And I think Obrestad has opened this for...
15.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
she's
no, she
getting a
opened
little
all
more
in, didn't she?
No, she's getting a little more than 2 to 1. She made it
32,000.
14,000.
14,000 more.
So she's probably supposed to call here.
32 more. You're
What's the
already in
total?
here.
32.
32.
And
That'll be 14.
you know, an easy shove by Phil, but one that sometimes he chooses not to make, and it's good that he made it here.
Would he have insta-called if Annette had just gone all in? I mean...
I know you are.
Well, that would have been really weird if she had decided to go all in for 20 big blinds, so I don't know.
right.
But that would be a really weird play and bad by her.
One of those live pro folds. You know, when you're like getting the right odds and then you still fold.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
the only one that does that.
No, I might actually do it for once.
I don't really like the idea of doing that because then you can... Let's see, it makes it a lot easier for people to go all in over the top of you.
What is
and then
her
you get to make
argument? Is it
more.
because it's Phil, or is it because of the situation?
It's because of the situation, the structure. It's still probably a slightly bad fold in a vacuum
Play it bad.
with the information, let alone the fact that
That's why he has the
in the future people know she can fold there occasionally, and some people might shove a little bit more because of it.
There's a lot of jockeying right now, and the Wolf in front, but with the blinds about to hit 5 and 10, Tom, what do you predict?
I mean, especially with 6 people left in the bubble for not getting 6, it could be pretty easy for someone to run up a stack of 250, 300,000 without even getting a showdown by just raising a bunch of pots. If I was in Roland's spot, I'd just be raising every hand, hoping no one looks down at the hand. And if I lost a pot or 2, I might change that, but I think that'd be the right choice by him.
6-handed 5 and 10,000 blinds. Now that's something you don't see every heat.
It's everywhere. From the stat.
Basically, only a double through between first and
whatever they
sixth.
reported on the internet the last
More than
year, just from
80,000
what the actual
separates them.
facts.
I have a poker news reporter.
There was a great bet last year that they made in the limo on the way over. It was a memory bet about what 2 cards Phil Hellmuth had, and they ended up betting $50,000 on it, and Hellmuth ended up being right.
Well, then bet me.
I mean, the fact
And
is,
here,
How much
with your strategy, we were talking about, did you come
probably
last or
gonna be a
second
double
last?
up.
I mean, it's not like...
I mean, Obrestad's all in.
Come on, man. I mean, you guys are so
Oh, wow. And
amazing.
Juha has 7s also. If not, Tony G would have ended up calling with 6s.
Second worst in the world.
I mean, what sort of decisions is for Helppi? I mean, being
It's
that
an extremely easy call.
yeah,
Did you watch all
Just-
the shows?
even
I mean-
if he thinks he's most likely to be in a race here, or it's just not
But there's 15,000 dead chips in the pot.
right, and you have to take those odds.
And he does have 9,000 extra chips, which doesn't matter that much, but matters slightly because he isn't going to be in the blinds, and there's a chance he would still screw in the 5th if he loses. Plus, Annette is just shoving so many hands that she's going to be shoving a hand like 6-5 suited a lot of the time.
How many points absolutely hold?
I wonder how interested, all this time, what effect it's having on Tony. I mean, has he
I
already
feel-
made up his mind?
He probably hasn't seen his cards yet. They're probably just over the thing, and he hasn't looked at them.
Yeah.
I would assume that he hasn't looked at his cards yet.
Well, taking the time.
Even I can't call.
Wow.
Nice pair.
Sixes, I can't
Yeah, like 5s.
I don't understand Tony's fold at all. I mean, he's in the big blind. He already has 10,000 in.
I mean,
he is shorter stacked than Juha, and it does make a slight difference.
Sevens? Suits?
Because if he's out, he's completely out.
Suit? And 7s too.
They do?
I just wonder if Tony's thinking, and it's maybe too early for this, that actually, you know, he needs less chips to start to guarantee that final table place. The fact that he's got 10 points, you know, and everybody knows that getting to that final table is crucial.
That is somewhat true, but
too much time. We need a clock in this game.
I feel like I would still call on Tony's spot because the extra 10,000 chip there.
I kind of figured you had a pocket pair when you thought for that long.
I mean, how do you define it when it comes 5-5 ace?
If one thing, Tom, I mean, I don't know if it's pressure, I don't know what it is, but you know, there is something about what's going on here that's making people make some strange decisions, and the automatic all-in from Tony, King Queen takes that.
So Phil, about that, your placing last year. I want to bet that you were last.
No, I could have.
Okay.
So.
And Juha makes 2 wrong decisions in
how you
60 seconds.
He's
One of
not
them being
running.
betting Phil.
He's not running good.
Yeah, I'm going to bet Roland is what I want to bet.
I want to bet 5,000.
No, because I don't want to risk my cash, but I'll bet Roland.
Yeah,
5,000.
I got it. You got it with me, 5,000.
You don't want to bet with me?
You can have half.
What do you mean I lost the bet? You offered to...
I offered to cancel it because I don't want a big round.
Now it's 3.5 levels, still 6 players.
Look, I'll pay you 5,000.
And people really come down on 2 sides here. Is it time to gamble?
That's fair.
And start moving? Or is it time to play tight and avoid the bagel?
The way you act.
Looks like everybody here is on the one side.
No kidding.
Just limp in.
And now Phil's got a very easy shove here because Juha could decide to fold something.
Yeah, it's
He's only got
41,000,
41,000, but it's just enough that Juha might fold.
All right, I'm all in.
All in?
What does Juha need here to call?
I mean, I would call with any jack or better, probably any 10 or better. I would insta-call king, obviously. And Juha's going to count and then think about it, and I hope end up calling. That would be a really terrible fold. But this is where if Hellmuth had like 5,000 more chips, Juha would probably fold this hand.
You're getting pretty good odds here, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Have to call.
Cool.
I think you have me beat too. Maybe. Yeah.
World class.
World class.
And a little needle by Roland.
Might hold up. You get the more odds because of the quality of the player. Bang.
I don't know if I beat Juha in random races. But maybe.
Helppi was ahead before, he's still ahead.
5.
No, it's got everything.
6 outs for Phil.
Deuce.
Oh, that's a good card, Phil.
Yeah.
There's no way you can miss. Your favorite. You guys drawing so much.
After what you did to me after what you did to me yesterday, I feel like I might hit this.
The deuce, the 6, the 7, the 10.
It's a nice hand.
Ooh, the 8.
And he's missed.
Oh.
He's gone.
Bikes. The bike's out.
So
Now,
just a bit off.
is Phil going to look back at this heat when he finds out what happened, what everybody played? Is it time for him to start reconsidering?
I mean, now he really needs to play pretty aggressively to try to get some points. Maybe he'll realize it, take advantage of his somewhat tight image, and play pretty aggressively the next 2.
Juha, I can't shake your hand today. You've been too. I did? Jesus.
Phil, it's just like in the World Series. His final hand, you couldn't shake his hand.
Bagel.
Wow, it's personal there.
In the very first hand, Roland hit a 2-outer again. I mean, he hit a 5. It's unbelievable. I mean, but this time I just knew he had it. I mean, I made a lay down that I don't really think anybody out there would have made. I mean, you know. But it's just kind of brutal, so it just doesn't seem like I'm, you know, I think I'm all in, and it just seems like I never win.
Helppi, I'll tell you what, if there's anything that makes him happier than winning a heat, it's getting one over on Hellmuth. Phil gone, and Juha all of a sudden the chip leader. And I mean, it's a funny way to get the chip lead, but he's done it.
I'm not at home, but I'm the home player. The home game player.
he's been
and I'm ready to play home games.
He's been airlifted in.
I'm always admitting I'm the guy that the business people want to play with. I'm the fun player.
He's the added money.
such a bad hand.
Well, Tony's now. If he folds, I mean, he can only.
Oh, that was nice.
Oh, wow, Tony, come on. Come on. Wow. Yeah, and I would go all in here in this spot with Juha's hand, but calling is not bad. I definitely wouldn't raise. I would either limp or go all in with that hand. The hands I'd raise would be my very best and very worst hands, and I'd make it like 26,000. But I would never raise a hand like Queen Jack because you can't fold to a shove, but you're obviously not happy calling one.
This is, oh, I don't know. I mean, now it's starting to be the 7th or 8th time these guys are squared off blind on blind, and.
Well, that's because both of them probably aren't putting in quite enough raises pre-flop, and it results in a few post-flop hands.
Funny, that's what Devilfish was saying last time.
I laid down like A7.
I mean, that fold by Tony is just. It's not often that I really disagree with Tony's plays, but that one was pretty bad. There's a lot of times, obviously, I would do something different than Tony. Maybe I think it's slightly bad. Maybe my choice is bad and his is right, whatever. But I'm very confident that that's a very bad fold by Tony there. Even with considerations of making sure he gets enough points and stuff, it's still just such a. He makes so many chips by shoving there.
Right. Although, I mean, are we at that situation like in a tournament where the bubble has burst and now people are just going to be looking to get their chips in, so you actually have to tighten
There
up?
is a little bit less of a bubble, that's definitely true. But there's still some to be had.
And Annette's not gonna. She's not gonna dog
She's
this
got a
one,
good
isn't
hand,
she?
yeah.
Now, how far? Where does Ace-6 fit in against Annette's range?
I can't imagine calling here. Even if it's ahead of her range, it's just. I can't imagine calling. I think it's probably close to even with her range, maybe slightly behind. I'm not sure, but it's probably slightly behind actually. But I can't imagine ever calling. It's just. I mean. There's so much value to having chips, and
right. And if people are making mistakes, like you say, then
like folding so much, yeah.
Yeah.
And once someone's already all in, there really is. I mean, you are supposed to fold a lot of hands in the structure.
You guys need to win it. So.
Yeah, we know. Or I know.
I'm just trying to get up another spot.
How can you explain that they're all just sitting there like lumps?
I can't. I don't know. I think they're playing far too tight. Now, here with Juha's hand, I'd make it like 24,000, 26,000, somewhere in there.
The way you're dealing the cards is just crazy today.
And now
it's like no over the top, not once. It's
it'd
like,
be gambly, but
I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's not a bad
like,
spot for Roland to shove all in there.
It's like
everyone's at the bottom of the deck.
No, there's no hands.
Everyone's at the bottom of the deck. Like the low
That's
cards.
not really true. We've seen that
I've been getting some
the starting hands people have gotten is maybe very slightly
Yeah, but
less
then
than
nobody else does.
you normally expect, but people are just folding so much of their borderline hands.
Well, I mean,
they're
Tony,
just waiting for aces, basically.
I just think Tony's clever enough where I wonder if he's making this that he's not getting any hands because he starts actually planning to move with nothing. I hope. Maybe I just hope that's true because it's a nice thing for him to say.
I think if he was planning to move with nothing, he shouldn't complain that he's getting many hands. He should just say like, I mean. He has the image of someone who might be folding good hands. So I think that's a better image to have, because then you'd think he must have the very best of hands.
Raise. 30,000 total.
And here I'm sure she'll be going on. Yep. And now I don't know what the hell I'd do in Tony's spot.
He's given himself this situation.
Yeah, I mean,
he only had 8.5 big blinds. It looked like an automatic shove for Tony, didn't
obviously. And now, I mean, I guess you got to call it off, but you can't be too happy about it.
Well, you can see. I mean, he's getting odds against any hand that doesn't dominate him. I mean, it turns out he's dominated, but you know, even though he's dominated, he's still only 3-1, right? I mean, it's not.
Don't stand up. You're not out.
Over 2
I'm out.
I hate when people do that. Always when they stand up, they hit.
He's not on their back.
That's a good flop for Tony.
Nice.
Couple extra
Picks up a gut
outs.
shot at least.
Yeah, he's not expecting it.
7 outs.
Bike time.
Now he's got the jacket on too.
Well, the good news for Mr. G.
He's trying everything to win this spot. He's trying everything to win this spot.
He's going to end up with 12 points for 2 heats, which is an average that'll get him to the final table.
Right, right. He still is not in bad shape.
Ace on the river. There's no respect. Well done. Well done, everyone. Well done.
Thanks for coming down.
Putting on his coat. Have you seen his coat? His coat comes with its own
pretty
bodyguard.
Nice. It's pretty nice. And now here, Annette has a few more chips than Juha and is going to play them very aggressively, and she's just a huge favorite to win right now.
There is a funny thing that's happening with Annette, which is that even though everybody knows she just shoves all the time, she's only gotten called once, and she turned over the queens, and that sticks in your mind, doesn't it?
She also, I mean, she did pass up like that queen too, where it would be an okay spot for her to shove. She'd be gaining chips long term by doing that, even though it would be the wrong decision because of the way the tournament's set up. And she is getting a lot of good hands. I would assume she'd also shove with some fairly marginal hands.
I actually, I've seen her play. It wasn't this exact format, but it was this sort of a one-table second go. She got head up against someone. She was all in 18 times in a row.
Yeah, I mean heads up. One of you is playing bad if you do that heads up. Obviously, it's very likely if she was all in 18 times in a row and the other person folded that it was the other guy who was playing bad. But you know, there's not the tournament considerations like there are right now. So then it's just whatever you think is going to win the pot the most times.
Right.
But right now, with the way it's set up, these players need to think they're making so many chips in order for them to have a correct call. So she can just shove blind when it's her turn to act. And it's better that she looks at her cards so that she doesn't give anyone a reason to make a stupid call. But it's right for her to shove every single hand when she's first to act. The only reason for her not to would be to set up something for the future.
Where is this? What is the most important thing for her to think about?
This call favors to make her chips right here. Oh, I didn't see how short Roland is. She needs to call this. I thought he had about 120,000, in which case, even though it would favor to make her chips, it might be right for her to fold. It'd be close. But with him being this short, it's just an automatic call. I don't think it's close at all.
Right. She's called. And she's pretty happy at this. 57%. Of course, 5 cards.
Even if she loses this hand, she's not in that bad of a shape. Roland's going to have 190,000 and she'll still have 150,000 and be able to still just hope that he plays too tight like he has been and take advantage.
It's just the ace.
No, he shouldn't be.
Standard stuff there, and it's good news for Wolfe, but Annette still average exactly with about 150. Juha now the short stack by a significant margin. And Tom, the other players should be aware of that and avoid his big blind.
I would disagree because I think Juha's going to be folding his big blind a bit and stuff. It's just since he's so short stacked. Also, they're not risking that many chips.
I see.
Because he's only got 115,000 that they're risking if they lose.
Oh.
And here's going to be an all-in.
Let me just...
It's like 110 or something.
Yeah, go.
Cool.
Well, we got the race, and
here we are again.
I was shoving.
It's Helppi's second race. First time the Nenad's had the
King 9.
Of course, he's got 50,000 back. That 50,000 is going to be pretty important.
Don't worry.
And a good flop for Juha.
Yeah, and Nenad called it out, the jack on the flop. I guess sometimes you...
2 outs going into the river for Nenad. He has not been running good in all situations. I mean, I sucked out on him in that one hand, and then he was a slight favorite in this coin flip and lost.
What do you have left?
50. Well,
here's a good spot for Annette or Roland. They need to have a decent enough hand that they're coin flipping or so with Nenad, but they could go all in pretty wide because the other people are going to be afraid to call them.
Cool. You looked at one card.
Oh wow!
Bad beat.
Wow.
Wow. That's pretty sick.
That's the first spot of luck Nenad's had tonight. And
well, he's only had the luck so far. He needs to not hit a 20.
I think it was 50 total.
Yeah, you didn't show. Yeah.
Nothing
happened.
What'd you have?
You are Helppi.
Oh,
You're Helppi.
10 and an 8, but no 7.
Maybe it's turn.
No
Nad's
wonder.
gonna need to
The
hit
worst hand twice in a row.
an ace, queen, jack, 9, 7,
I guess
or
he would have
spade,
folded those tens.
so that he has a
And the ace jack.
little bit more of a sweat going into the river. Oh, and he's down to 2 outs again. It's pretty rough.
Pretty sick.
Yeah,
Pretty rough.
he's already said how sick it is.
pretty rough.
About 8 times during this Premier League. You just gotta hope it doesn't get any sicker for him.
It's just pretty brutal. Being so happy to look down at jacks,
Oh, thanks.
and then laughing even more when your opponent has 10s, and then still losing.
I won a lot of small pots and still gave myself a shot. And just the way it happens. And the last hand was unfortunate, just big hand versus big hand. And happened to have the 2 jacks against 2 tens. Just got unlucky. It happens. What are you going to do?
And now let's see if Juha can decide to just start playing really aggressively and try to lock up a win here.
I know, I mean, Helppi's a guy who feels like he's been running bad on TV for a while. I think it may have taken his confidence away, but surely he knows how to seal the deal
Thinkers,
here.
and then some people just don't think about it at all.
And Juha has to raise, is it 85% here?
No, I'd say a little less, because now Roland has a few more chips. So he's got about 12.5 big blinds, which it can actually hurt Juha. I would still definitely be shoving 6-7 suited, obviously. And obviously Annette's going to shove the ace-2 suited.
There might have been an argument for Annette to fold if Juha had shoved there.
Oh,
The
yeah.
ace-2.
I think she would have.
On my head. So sick. Sorry. Hold.
I think Roland may have called this and just flipped his hand over,
Oh,
and
yeah,
he
he
did
did.
instantly. And I guess he's, you know...
And this call by Roland, it's kind of iffy. It's probably the right call versus Annette, but he's got to be unhappy to make it, but he needs to make it versus Annette because that's the way she plays, is she's going to be shoving in a lot of hands.
He's got 61,000 or so back.
Didn't expect that.
But he's not liking that flop, that's for sure. That's one of the runners.
There you go. He's got 2 outs now.
You hate when you have to hit a perfect card to get the 2 outs. don't
That's
you?
true. Well, he could have turned a queen or a jack and then that 4.
No, it's there.
Ace is full.
Full house. Just full
Probably
house.
gonna win.
Yeah. Probably.
And for Annette, that double up means not far from the chip lead, and Roland nearly out to 50.
105.
58.
Right now,
That's what you said, wasn't it?
I mean, if you're Juha on the button first to speak, basically, you
I would
don't
actually
mind
play pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind folding at all here.
Roland's put all his chips in the
See,
dark.
I don't think that's good. I think he can fold a 2-7 offsuit kind of hand. I mean, literally only the bottom 2 or 3% of hands. But I think he can definitely fold some of those.
I don't know if Annette looked. I think
Come
she
on,
did.
come on.
She must have.
I had a deuce. Deuce 4.
Yeah, I would have folded the 8-3 in that spot, especially because then
No,
she
it's flipping.
gives Roland chips, which isn't
Yeah.
bad since she has position on Juha.
Just let the best hand hold up. That's all I'm asking.
I don't
Yeah,
like her
pretty good
shove
too.
with the
I have to
8-3.
say.
Could come back to haunt her. I mean,
Yeah,
it could
those
easily come
54,000
back to
chips
haunt her.
are really valuable to her.
7 to be.
If she folds the 10,000 chips, it still is a tough spot for Juha,
Too many splits.
and she has position in all the hands. I
I
mean,
think a 6 would be a good card too.
3,
six is
6, 8.
added
That's
keys.
pretty much the story.
oh, there you go.
I felt the 3 coming.
And 4 points are a lot more than DeWolf has gotten so far. 6 through 2.
And they're almost exactly even, heads up.
Good luck.
I need to get a win on the board, really. I mean, if I get second in my next heat, that'll be fine. But I just need to keep getting the top 2 because third is just you know, it's a big difference.
Well, we are heads up, Tom. Took a long time to get here, but now
That's true.
heads up with even chips. And, I mean, on one side, Annette, who's played quite aggressive to get here, and on the other side, Juha, who really hasn't. But what do you predict from the heads up?
So what I think is very likely to happen is that Juha's been folding a lot, and Annette noticed that. And he was folding a lot because of the tournament considerations, but I don't know if she'll fully realize that, and I think she might have a slightly wrong read of Juha.
This is kind of a winner-take-all situation,
Oh,
and that
yeah,
those extra
definitely.
4 points. I mean, but even so, there's no way to really be careful about it, right?
Right,
I mean,
obviously. You should just play overhand the best possible way.
I mean, you can
And
pick-
here Juha's gonna, you know, oh, I thought he was gonna make a raise that I was gonna criticize. He ended up limping.
Who do you think's got the post-flop game? We haven't really seen either of these players much post-flop.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played that much with either of them post-flop. To be honest, I'd expect both of them to make a decent amount of post-flop mistakes. But they're both pretty smart people, so I'm sure they'll adapt somewhat. I like this bet here from Annette.
I mean, when in...
And I actually like this call here, too, from Juha, especially with his image. And he basically wins this pot unless a 7 or a jack rolls off. Even if a 9 rolls off, he almost definitely wins the pot.
Yeah, she has... it's almost impossible for her to put him on what he's doing now, right?
Exactly, especially with the way he's played and stuff.
Float, bluff.
Right, and now, in Juha's spot, I like a check more than a bet, and I would bet the river.
40,000.
Because there's no...
Since he bets so small, I think Annette should be calling there a decent amount, because he could still have a hand like a queen-jack. I mean, you got to give him a credit that there's a very slight chance he could float. I would have put it at extremely small, which obviously probably was wrong since he did float.
He used his image there.
He did use his image. He used it well. And since she's folding the turn there, I guess his bet is better than checking and betting the river. But it's easy for me to say seeing his cards, but I'm very confident that if I was at the table, I'd be really angry he bet. I'd want to fold, and I'd end up throwing in those 40,000 chips and hoping he didn't bet the river with 9-3 there. And I think it's a slight mistake that she didn't do that.
It's interesting. I mean, Annette, when she won the World Series of Poker Europe, of course, £1 million, the head-up lasted 4.5 hours against a very good player.
Who was it against?
John Tabby Tabby. I don't know if you know him. But
I've heard the name somewhere.
He was the runner-up. Yeah, well, and Juha, of course, played quite a long heads-up against Phil Hellmuth for a World Series bracelet a few years ago.
Oh, really?
So Phil won that one. But these are people who have closed the deal in tournaments.
25,000.
I think this is a decent bet by Juha. He's got there's a decent amount of turns he can pick up where he can fire again. And also, if he hits a king, he's obviously likely to have the best hand. But he obviously can't play the hand by checking, so... And this is not one of those turns that he could fire again on, in my opinion. He obviously agrees. But I think if he picks up any ace, 10, or 9 on the turn, he can fire, and obviously a king he should bet. And a 7 he might bet sometimes. And even a random rag card, like a 2, or like a 3, 4, 5, or 6, he might bet some of the time.
And, I mean, for Obrestad here, she needs to bet because it's such a drawy board?
No, I disagree. I don't really like this bet by her. It ends up being fine most of the time, and it's close to the same as checking. But I wouldn't bet there versus Juha. I wouldn't bet there in that spot, and versus most people I wouldn't bet.
He could have played a queen like that. He could have played...
well, the problem is, like, he could, with the stacks exactly like they were, he could choose to bluff, which would suck, obviously, but he could also have a queen enough that you're not really happy with holding or with stacking off. And there's also very few cards that are going to peel off where you're not happy putting in at least one bet on the river. Also, when you bet the turn, it's less likely you're bluffing, so you might not get called by like an ace-x hand, whereas on a lot of rivers you will get some value. So for all those reasons combined, the huge majority of the time I would check that hand on the turn.
He's got a limp, because if he raises, he's not comfortable folding, and he's not comfortable calling.
That's exactly what I'd say, yes.
The downside is he has to play against 2 random cards that could outflop him.
Check.
And he obviously can outflop the 2 random cards as well. Which is done.
And I mean, I would raise the hand some small amount of the time, but I like him limping at this time.
Can you just check and fold bottom pair?
I don't think so. I mean, unless she has some read on him or something, I really don't like that.
I'm all in.
All in.
And pretty standard shove here by Annette with only 12 big blinds. She's gotten short enough that she either needs to limp or shove, and I would generally shove that hand with 12 big blinds. With 13 or 14, I might limp it, but not 12. Especially because I think her first limp is likely to get shoved on because of the fact that a few of her raises have been shoved on and stuff. It would seem that
Yeah, what's new?
Juha might be able to think it through and be on the level where her first limp she probably isn't going to have too strong of a hand. And I think that's actually kind of true that her first limp she probably won't have that strong of a hand, but I don't know if it's coming across well because sometimes I ramble, but I think there's a lot more skill to these stacks than a lot of people realize. Obviously, I think there's much more skill to 100 big blind poker than to 12 big blind poker, but over a long enough sample size, I think that a ton of skill would come through in these. The sample size, you'd need to have a lot more games of 12 big blind freeze outs than of 100 big blind freeze outs because obviously there's more luck when you only have 12 big blinds. But
and yet, thinking back, were you happy about how your money ended up getting in against Tony with the 8s?
Oh, obviously. I mean, that's his shove's fine. I am folding some amount of the time, and he has a decent hand. And obviously, 8s with 15 big blinds is
massive.
Yeah.
And there was a huge percentage of hands he would have shoved with that you were in very good shape against. Ace.
Right. And now here, Juha's raise calling. This was that little thing I talked about before the start of.
I'm suited.
Before the start of this game that I thought might happen, and I mean, not to claim that I can predict the future or anything, but you could tell there was a small % chance this kind of thing would happen. He got somewhat lucky that she had a hand. Let's see if he holds.
5, the 4, the jack. Those are Annette's cards.
A little nervous. I have a good feeling.
That's important. Yeah, I have a bad feeling about that. Come on, one.
Ah, sick. Nice hand.
Well, Juha gets through. Annette with 2
Yeah.
top 3s. It was squeaky, but they've done it.
For some reason, I thought I was going to hit that. Just like,
Let's see how the league
Where
table
is it?
stands
Come
now.
on.
Big win for Juha Helppi, considering where he came from. 12 points will suit him well as Tony G. But JC Tran has a game in hand, so he'll be looking to be a favorite to be the leader after the next match. Annette Obrestad, she's been the top 3 twice and rounds out that top 4. In the playoff zone, most of these players have a game in hand that'll be hoping to take some points through into the top zone. Tom Dwan with 6, Eastgate with 6, Roland the Wolfe probably a little bit disappointed about his finish tonight, but still well in the top 8. And in the relegation zone, Andy Black has only played 1 and gotten 3 points, but how about Hellmuth and Medic? 3 points each, and they've played 2. And of course, the Devilfish, who's taken the bagel, but next time could be his chance to put some points on the board.
I'll be relaxing now. Like, as long as I don't do anything stupid, I think I can easily get into, the final or the playoffs. So I'm just gonna make sure I don't bust like 6th or 5th place, and I think I'll be fine.
The win today really helps me to also play better and more aggressive because I'm not in any pressure to score more points really at the moment. So in the next 8, I think I'm going to play a lot more aggressive, and I'm really going to do it this time.
Next time, Tom Dwan is back to the table.
All right,
You take a jack.
here we go.
He'll take on fellow young guns JC Tran and world champion Peter Eastgate. But will they all be rumbled by the legend that is the Fish?
Tom, I'm talking to you. Fucking hate this game.